Good morning, my name is Dan Brown. I'm with Orange County Fire Operations Training and Safety. Today we're going to introduce to you our new OES Type 6 patrols. They are on a 2020 Ford F550 chassis with a full build-up from HME. We're going to start our walk around here with our HME Type 6. Starting at the front bumper, it does have a front well that's plumbed in to both the main pump and the auxiliary pump. We have the large electric siren here that's operated by two buttons within the floor of the cab. It is a four-wheel drive system. Unlike some of our older versions, it does not have a stick shift type four-wheel drive. It's on the dash, 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. You'll notice it does have locking hubs. It has an auto, and it also has a lock. So we encourage you to read the Ford manual on how the four-wheel drive system works so you can get into the right four-wheel drive system and move the vehicle appropriately. As we move back here through the truck, it does have some running boards that provide minimal protection to the front discharge plumbing. As operators, I want you guys to all pay attention to that plumbing as it goes back over the rear axle and underneath the pump house to the pump house, which we will talk about here in a little bit. Here we have our DEF fill. This is a 6.7 liter diesel motor with all the new AQMD products, including your DEF. So I'd encourage you to make sure you have enough DEF to get across the state if needed. This is an all-risk piece of equipment from OES. So in addition to wildland fires, there is a component where they may dispatch you for rescue, for disaster, mudslides, earthquakes, and such. So they've included a full complement of Hurst hydraulic tools and large wheel-in searchlights. It includes rams, cutters, jaws, chains, and a hydraulic jack to continue on. A large compartment here for all of your gear, and if you need to include a cooler or what have you, and our hose roller. In the back here we have all of our nozzles and fittings, supply hoses, first aid kit, and in addition to that we have large collapsible cones, which for 5 for traffic control. On both sides of this Type 6 we have aluminum chalk blocks. They're slung inboard. Make sure if you need to chalk your piece of equipment, which we always recommend that those there are used, and make sure you're familiar with how to remove and take care of them. On top of our Type 6 here, we have 2 hose reels. Should be about 150 feet long. Make sure they're secured. This is plumbed to the aux pump as well as the main pump, and they are foam capable. On the side here, we have our Kuzmo auto eject. It is auto ejection, so if you are an apartment that uses that, you do not have to pull this cord out from the side of this truck. It has a full wheel-in package with these side emergency lights that also have floodlights that project out the bottom, which are controllable within the cab. And lastly, on this vehicle, there's the diesel fill here, only on this left side. Ensure that the cap's nice and tight so you don't throw a trouble code. On the officer side or passenger side of our vehicle, we do have another hose reel. It's mounted above. In this first compartment, you're going to find most of the gasoline power tools. We have a steel chainsaw, a large fire extinguisher, a selection of fuels and oils, and a Honda portable pump. Continuing on here in the middle, it's another large compartment with a pull-out for either your cooler, gear bags, or what have you. Here in the back compartment, we have all our wildland tools and other associated items. For our reel lines on both the left and right side, they do have an automatic rewind. The button's located within the forward compartments in the back wall. If you do have a failure of the rewind motor, which is possible, we do have rewind handles available within the vehicle, so you can manually rewind those. Here in the back you have your WUI pulls to hold your wildland hose. In this compartment here you have a little giant ladder, it's foldable, rubbish hook, pike pole, and the large handle for the brush rake. The head is on the right rear compartment. Above here we have 2 hose beds. You have supply and the provided wildland and structure hose. Make sure that you keep the flaps on and they are secured. These hose beds are quite short if you're in steep and uneven terrain. Because they're aluminum floored, this hose can come out quite easily. Okay, starting in the back here with your pump panel, we do have that auxiliary pump. It is a diesel fire 24 horsepower aux pump that supplies your reel lines and smaller other items. That control panel is located right here. It's a dual control panel. You can also start it within the cab. So if you're entering an area where you want to have a pump engaged, you can start that. That is your mobile pump that you cannot pump with the main pump and drive at the same time. Okay? You do have your tank fill valve here. and this is a little different for a lot of us. We have a large electronic valve for your tank to pump. This vehicle has about a 280-gallon water tank and a 20-gallon foam tank. That makes it a total of 300 gallons. Okay? It does have an electric hail priming system, and with that priming system, you also need to ensure which pump you want to prime. Okay? It's very specific. This handle has a small notch. It points either to main pump or you can turn it into the aux pump. Okay? The foam system is operated here with the ICANN system through Akron. There's a large digital display that you can calculate your foams and do all that kind of stuff. And there's also a foam fill system here just below it, and the foam intake here at the bottom. Moving over here, we have a 2.5 intake that's valved, and we also have a non-valved, basically straight eye of the pump suction. You can draft with this rig. We recommend that you draft through the eye of the pump here. You can also draft through the 2.5 intake, and you can utilize the hoses that are mounted above. There's some 3-inch drafting hose, 2 sections, about 8 feet long, and there's the associated strainers that go along with that. There's also a smaller 1.5-inch suction hose that goes with the portable pump that we can utilize as well. We do have your water tank level gauge. This is your intercom jack. The vehicle comes with an intercom by CSI, and as the pump operator, you come back here, and we recommend that you utilize this. You can transmit through these buttons here. So this vehicle is provided with a midship pump. It's PTO driven through the transmission. It's 500 GPMs. It's controlled by this FRC pump control. Make sure you read up on the controls. It displays engine and pump status here on these displays. It is capable of running high pressures and pumping that progressive hose lay. For our agency, a progressive hose lay is essentially anything over 300 feet. Okay? The auxiliary pump, it's a 24 horsepower diesel powered Kubota motor with 180 GPM at 80 PSI. This pump you can use for mop up, short duration hose lays. We don't allow anything greater than 300 feet at our agency, just so it can maintain itself and not overheat or fail. This is labeled engine cooler, but it's actually your pump cooler. If you're gonna run your main pump long distance, high pressures for supplying a progressive hose lay, which is what you want to use to do your progressive hose lays with, you want to ensure that your pump cooler is on. Okay? If you need a large discharge, you do have this 2.5 here in the back. All this hose beds up here are all flat loads. There's no pre-connects in the back other than our reel lines and the front bumper line. So if you need to flow larger GPM, this is your 2.5 discharge here in the back. We have one priming pump for 2 pumps. Okay? You can prime the aux pump with the button in the cab or here, or you could prime the main pump with the hail switch here. Okay? And within that, if your aux pump is out of water for whatever reason, you need to be able to come back here, turn this lever to aux pump, hit the priming button, and ensure that your aux pump is primed. But after you do that, make sure you move this back to the main pump. The way the rig is plumbed, you will drip water continuously out of the priming system if it's left on the aux side. And so in order to stop that, make sure this is always on the main side when you're doing any pumping operations. Inside the vehicle here, we're going to go over our controls and radio functions. Up top in the center console overhead, we have a button that's called Master Warn. That's going to turn on all your wheel-in lights and your siren controls. At this time, there's only one button. The rest are not functioning or programmed with the vehicle. As you come down by the stereo controls, there's a large button that says Panic Button. That Panic Button is linked to the state AVL system. If you hit that button, it's going to cause concern within the OES system all the way up at the state level in Sacramento that there is a problem with this vehicle. It is not to be messed with. That's why it's guarded unless you actually do have a scenario where you need help. Understand that it does go through the AVL system, so the help will not be immediate. It's better to do that distress call or whatever you need through your radios. Okay, moving on down through the regular controls. We have, for us, this is an Orange County Fire 800 megahertz radio, so we can utilize it within our local system. It does have this map light available. It's provided with a GPS system from Garmin, The manual is online or within the supplies that you get. The CSI intercom system is controlled here, the volume and the squelch. It is Q radios, but understand that if you're going to transmit through the headsets, you want to transmit between these two buttons. There's the VHF and then there's the 800 that we installed. There's a door open light that's tied to your doors in the back, and the siren brake for the electric Q siren up front. Okay, that Q siren or the Screaming Eagle siren is controlled by the foot pedals on the floor, both on the captain's and the operator's side. And in order to make that stop, you got to hit and hold this button. Coming down further, we have the state-provided BK radio. In addition to this state-provided BK radio, there's also a handheld BK radio to go along with it. Further down here in the center, we have the aux pump controls. If you want to start the aux pump, it's quite simple. With the vehicle running, turn it to ignition, turn it on, and it'll run. Okay. There is a prime button that you need to hit in order to generate pressure. After you generate pressure, you can go ahead about your pumping evolution. To turn the pump off, just feel free to hit the ignition switch over to the off button. There's going to be an oil pressure alarm and an over-temp alarm. But understand that pump has no heat sensors on it, and if you deadhead or run that pump at high pressures without flowing water, it will overheat the pump, and it is a very small pump body. Further down the center console here, you have the wheel-in controls for your siren and lights. Make sure the power is on, and you can go through the sequence however you need, as well as your PA system. This does not control the lights, it's purely siren. The lights are mentioned above with the overhead panels. Below that is your main pump shift for the 500 GPM mounted pump. This pump cannot be pump and roll. It's a fixed system, so you're statically pumping. This is for your progressive hose lays or higher pressure. You must follow this road to pump and pump to road sequence. If this sequence is out, the transfer case gets out of whack, and you're going to have alignment issues with the gears. Below that is your water level and your foam tank level and the white light cutout. So if you're working at night and you want to turn off the white lights, you can do that with that switch. On top of our Type 6 here, we have our Kubota powered auxiliary pump. This pump, single stage, 180 GPM, and it's going to be required to be checked out weekly, and if not daily after use. There is no protection from leaves and debris getting in there, so part of your daily check, because the exhaust is set in the compartment here, we want to make sure we get all the brush, leaves, and the other junk out of that area before your daily operation. You do have your coolant recovery tank, alternator belt, and air cleaner. Make sure that you check all of that daily if you're in severe duty operation. Above the pump, you'll see two valves with silver handles. Those are the valves for your auxiliary reel lines. If you have a failure of your reel line of any sort, you can come up here in this hatch and turn those off. To talk about the reel lines back here, you don't want to try to prevent from storing anything in this area behind the reel lines. That is your tank fill and your foam fill. If you overfill any of them, that's where it's going to come out. So anything you store here is going to get damaged. Additionally, do not step on top of the motors or store anything on top of the motors, because you're going to break that wire fittings. If your foam system fails to pump out of the can from the ground, you can come up here and either batch mix your water, or you can actually just pour the foam into the tank here at the top if the foam system still works. So if your foam fill fails, you can pour it in here at the yellow cap. If your foam mixing system fails, you can batch mix the water if you need to. But make sure you flush after you're done and get all the foam out of your pump system.